Who are all those people? Huh? Who are they? Hello, BookTube, and welcome to your Daily Penguin. This is our tour through my Penguin Classic wall. Going book by book and author by author, and sometimes I can tell the author by author part is going to be a problem because you people have a screw loose. You have cows wandering in the back 40, if you know what I mean. You can't seem to get enough of me gassing on about books. And so I have heard howls of protest that I held up all of the individual novels of Jane Austen instead of talking about each one individually for, as a couple of you put it, one person said I should talk for 40 minutes on each novel, and another person said I should talk for an hour on each novel. So the Penguin Classic videos where we just go through a whole author in one video are clearly going to be contentious. So I thought I would return to Jane Austen once again. We did the Jane Austen Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition that was beautiful, the one-volume collected novels that is just my go-to volume for Jane Austen. And then we did the individual Penguin Classic Black Spine trade paperbacks of all of the novels except for the ephemera, which has a volume of its own, but I don't know that I have it, and I wouldn't bother to talk about it. I hear rustling, don't you? Baby, what are you doing? No, don't do that, Frida. You're temperamental because you're not on camera? Hmm? Okay, fine. that is in a quick nutshell, Steve's life with his own dogs. With my own dogs, the cycle is, what are you doing? Oh, no, don't do that. Oh, you really want to? Okay, go ahead. I'll clean up. I'll clean up after you. That is not true with any other dog on earth. Only my dogs are not controlled, schooled in any way. I let them school themselves. I don't impose my will on them at all. Or I try not to. And in this case, this little dog has never given me occasion to do that. She wants so little. She's such wonderful company that I largely let her do what she wants. So if she wants to tear apart a bunch of paper and leave a mess on the floor, and then look at me with the usual doggy eyes, that their go-to excuse, I don't have any opposable thumbs, I can't pick up after myself, then I'll let her do that. But anyway, yesterday we did those Black Spine Penguins. And today we are returning to Jane Austen because I realized that I have a number of Penguin Classic Deluxe editions of individual Jane Austen novels. But, oddly enough, I don't have them all. I'm missing some and have doubles of others. So who knows what explains that. Like, for instance, this lovely Penguin Classic Deluxe edition of Emma. There is, this is cover art by Dadu Shin, and it is an outline of one person containing many couples and many people who wish to be couples. It's actually a kind of a canny illustration for the cover of Emma, and you can't make it out in this video, but it's a heavy matte finish. You've got the deckled edges and the French flaps. A very nice volume. So it is yet another. I got tweaked by quite a few people because I was going through all the different Jane Austens that I have, and also coveting one more. I've been told that the little decorative collection, the box set that I lusted after and don't have, is the Macmillan Collector's Library, the new Macmillan Collector's Library of Jane Austen. Gorgeous thing. God almighty. Look it up online. It's beautiful. I don't have that, but I do have the Modern Library hardcover with a lovely little illustration on the cover, and I have that Penguin Classic Deluxe hardcover collected, and I have all the Penguin Classic Black Spines individually, and I have, it turns out, a number of these Penguin Classic Deluxe editions of the books alone. Probably I also have some old, battered, mass market Signet and Bantam editions elsewhere in Hyde Cottage, but I have this, and this is edited with an introduction by Juliet Wells. So a very good, solid volume to have. And then, for some reason, I have not one Penguin Classic Deluxe edition of Sense and Sensibility, but two. I don't know why. Oh, I do know why. In a way, I know why. Because Penguin is very nice to send me a lot of their new releases. And over the years, they've just accumulated. And they're one of the few things I get from a publisher where it's not really going to cross my mind to get rid of it. And so I got a Penguin Classic Deluxe edition of Sense and Sensibility. All editions of, like I mentioned yesterday, all editions of Sense and Sensibility are going to have two women on the cover. And this is also art by Dadu Shin. And you've got the French flaps have artwork on the Penguin Classic Deluxe editions. They don't load these things down with a whole lot of extraneous textual matter. And this has an introduction and notes by Devoni Looser, Looser. And I read the introduction and notes and liked them quite a bit. This is again a heavy matte finish, a nice heavy duty paperback if you want an individual Jane Austen work instead of a big collected. But I also have another Penguin Classic Deluxe edition of Sense and Sensibility. This is the bicentennial edition. It also has the French flaps. This is art by oh my god, the cover art is by Audrey Niffenegger, the writer. Oh, I didn't know she had talent as an artist as well. Look at that. There's a quote on the back. More scripting. Audrey Niffenegger can draw. Who knew? And this has, I don't know if you can make it out. Oh yeah, you can. This has gold gilding on the teacup there. This is a Tempest in a teacup. This doesn't have two women on the cover, but it does have a drawback. It has a drawback. Which is that the foreword is by Kathleen Sheen. Now, we have a very good novelist doing the artwork for the cover of this book. But we have Kathleen Sheen doing the foreword. And Kathleen Sheen is a wonderful person, a wonderful teacher, and the author not just of a bad novel, but of the single worst novel ever written. All of the make-weight murder mysteries, all of the Regency romances, all of the penny dreadfuls, all of the ridiculous westerns, all of that for 400 years, all of it. Out of all that, she is, alive today among us, the author of the single worst novel ever written, The Love Letter. So there's pluses and minuses. There are pros and cons to having her introduce Sense and Sensibility. If I seem to remember correctly, her foreword is inoffensive, but it's difficult to shake off The Love Letter from anything that I do that has any connection with Kathleen Sheen. But nevertheless, this is another Penguin Classic Deluxe edition of this. So for some reason, I have two. Even though I do not have a Penguin Classic Deluxe edition of Mansfield Park or of Pride and Prejudice. And I seem to remember that the reason I don't have Pride and Prejudice is because the Penguin Classic Deluxe edition looks weird. Do I remember that correctly? I seem to remember that Elizabeth and Darcy are drawn in sort of inky, spidery, gothic fashion. I seem to remember the I hate to say this because I love Penguin Classics, of course, but I seem to remember the Penguin Classic Deluxe edition of Pride and Prejudice being singularly ugly. So I don't have it. And I don't have Northanger Abbey, and I don't have Mansfield Park. But of course I have a Penguin Classic edition of my favorite Jane Austen novel, Persuasion. Look at that. There's the ship at sea. There's our heroine's silhouette, and there's the captain's silhouette. Is this Dadu Shin as well? Yes, it is. Dadu Shin as well. There's the ship at sea again. And there's the manor house. Of course. Who could forget Persuasion? So there you go. Those are your Penguin Classics for today. A little bit anomalous, but then again, this is not. I never claimed that my Penguin Classics were some sort of systematically perfect collection. They're not. They're idiosyncratic. A lot of them are idiosyncratic. So we have 4 Penguin Classic Deluxe editions of individual novels of Jane Austen, 2 of Sense and Sensibility, and then 2 others. But others are missing. And I don't know if they're made, and I don't have them. I know that Pride and Prejudice is made, and I don't have it by choice. But I'm assuming that Mansfield Park and Northanger Abbey, I'm assuming that those are made, and that I just don't have them also by chance. But so that is your Penguin Classic for today. Of course, the recommendation part of the program stays the same as it was yesterday. I cannot recommend Jane Austen strongly enough if you haven't experienced her. When you talk to your extremely bookish friends and you bring up Jane Austen, you will tend to notice a uniformity of their response. And you will notice that in most cases, there'll be exceptions, of course, but in most cases, The response when you bring up Jane Austen is not the response you get when you bring up just books in general with those bookish friends. Instead, it'll be the response you get when you bring up Christmas or their favorite grandmother, or the pure disembodied concept of joy itself. Jane Austen provokes a deeper reaction in bookish people, tends to provoke that, than most authors who have ever lived. And I'm here to tell you that is warranted. That reaction is entirely warranted. So if you haven't read Jane Austen, you should. You should. Now, all of her books are etched in a kind of glowing genius, but they are in slightly different registers. So, if you read, for instance, if you pick up Mansfield Park, or especially Northanger Abbey, but if you pick up, let's say Mansfield Park is the one that you happen to have on your shelf, or that your parents happen to have on the shelf, and you pick that up and you say, all right, well, every reader that I know says that Jane Austen is the greatest thing since sliced bread, and now Steve is saying she's the greatest thing since sliced bread, I should probably read her, and here's the one I have to hand. If you pick that up, whether it's Mansfield Park or anything else, and you're thinking, okay, well, I've given her 30 pages, now I've given her 50 pages, now I've given her 70 pages. Still no magic. Still nothing calling to me. It could be that you are an obstreperous, stubborn little creature. but it also could be that the register of the particular book that she's written, that you've picked up, is not just the right register for you. I'm being a little bit vague. There's no way not to be. Like, for instance, in my own personal case, I recognize that Emma, and also Mansfield Park, absolutely, and also Sense and Sensibility, it gets a bad rap in this regard. I recognize that those works have the typical glowing Jane Austen genius. The ability to see through stone, the ability to capture the whole universe in a tiny little perturbation in one parlor of one house in one town. I recognize that, and I love them in their turn and in their own registers, but I'm perfectly willing to admit that the register of Pride and Prejudice is the one that actually works the most on me. So it just so happens that I encountered Jane Austen through Pride and Prejudice first. But if I hadn't done that, then I might have been off to a rocky start. You might be off to a rocky start. Don't let that dissuade you. This is one of the great, great authors. And one of the few authors, as we read before about her, one of the few authors who is both great and studied and also great and beloved. One of the few. You can go from one end of creation to another. In the Western world, you will never find a college syllabus that doesn't have Jane Austen on it. But you will also, in that same town, never lack for hundreds of readers who deeply, personally love her, many of whom never encountered her in school, or weren't ready for her when they encountered her in school and fell in love with her later. That love is well attested for the last 200 years. It is entirely justified. So, I know I always say there's no wrong way to read, and that your tastes are your own. Perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. And if it turns out that you read a Jane Austen novel, let's say you pick up Emma, and you just don't get what the fuss is about, you finish it and it's done nothing for you, okay, that's fine. You are perfectly entitled to your own reactions to literature. But what I'm telling you is, in the case of Emma or any other Jane Austen, if you have that reaction, you are dead wrong. You have simply missed the party. That's all there is to it. You got descriptions, directions for how to get to something that you had promised was a wonderful party in a new town. You went looking for that party. You went to the wrong building. There was no party there. You went home. What you need to do is not make the mistake of saying, well, then the party that existed couldn't have been any good. No, what you have to do when you get home is admit, I just followed the wrong directions. I went to the wrong location. That's all. That's all there is to it. There is no it takes all types when it comes to Jane Austen. So, just so we're clear on that fact. So that is our penguin for today. It's Jane Austen Deluxe editions. I thought I would do it as a sort of a coda to yesterday's, but I think tomorrow we are polling away from Jane Austen. So we'll see what we encounter then. I'll see you then. Thank you, BookTube.